Today's video will explain why Israel is not a safe destination for tourists in any sense. We will discuss 10 key reasons that make Israel a highly unsafe tourist spot and shed light on Israeli policies and historical events that have made the country a target for militant groups. Number 10. Illegal settlements and oppression. Israel's history is marked by oppression and illegal settlements, a significant factor that has led to constant unrest in the region. Following the establishment of Israel in 1948, over 700,000 Palestinians were forcibly displaced from their homes in what is known as the Nakba, or catastrophe. These people were driven out of their lands, which were then handed over to incoming Jewish settlers. Today, illegal settlements continue to expand, particularly in the West Bank, where more than 600,000 Israelis now live in settlements that violate international law. For tourists, these ongoing tensions are dangerous. The Israeli government has repeatedly ignored UN resolutions and international condemnation, leading to widespread protests and violent clashes in contested areas like East Jerusalem. These conflicts often spill into tourist zones, where even casual visitors can become unintended targets of violence. International tourists have found themselves caught in the middle of protests, road closures, and heightened security measures in places like the Old City of Jerusalem and Bethlehem, which draws thousands of tourists yearly. Additionally, the presence of heavily armed settlers and the clashes they have with local Palestinians create an unpredictable and volatile atmosphere that tourists are ill-prepared for. Number 9. Regional hostilities. Israel's tensions with its neighboring countries, including Lebanon, Syria, and Iran, are a long-standing source of instability. The country is in a constant state of military readiness, and visitors often find themselves in areas with heavy military presence and active conflict zones. The 2006 war with Lebanon's Hezbollah was one of many violent episodes in the region. In this war, northern Israel saw over 4,000 rockets launched from Lebanon, many of which hit areas frequented by tourists. More recently, ongoing airstrikes between Israel and Syria over contested Golan Heights territories, as well as frequent missile exchanges with Hamas in Gaza, add to the persistent threats. In regions near the Gaza Strip, air raid sirens and bomb shelters are a common sight, and tourists often need to stay on high alert. This constant regional hostility means that visitors are always at risk of becoming collateral damage in a larger geopolitical conflict. Number 8. Cyber attacks and espionage threats. Israel is one of the world's leaders in cyber technology, but this advantage comes with significant risks. The country has been both the source and the target of numerous high-profile cyber attacks. In 2020, Israeli hospitals and critical infrastructure were hit by a wave of cyber attacks, raising concerns about the safety of sensitive information, including that of foreign tourists. Additionally, Israel's technology sector has been embroiled in international espionage scandals. The NSO Group, an Israeli cybersecurity firm, made headlines when it was revealed that their software, Pegasus, had been used to spy on politicians, journalists, and human rights activists worldwide. For tourists, this raises concerns about data privacy. Cyber attacks can lead to a loss of personal data, while traveling in such a technologically monitored country can make visitors feel uneasy, knowing that their movements and communications could be tracked without their consent. Number 7. Airport and travel hazards. Traveling to Israel comes with its own set of risks, particularly at the entry and exit points. Ben Gurion Airport, Israel's largest international gateway, is a prime target for militant groups. In 1972, the airport was the site of a deadly attack, killing 26 people and injuring many more. While security has significantly improved since then, the threat remains. The fear of missile strikes or even drone attacks on Israeli airspace has led to multiple flight cancellations and emergency landings in recent years. Tourists also face intrusive and prolonged security checks at Israeli airports. The country's strict security protocols involve intense questioning, especially for travelers with Arab or Muslim backgrounds. These procedures can be stressful, often leading to confrontations between security personnel and tourists, sometimes ending in detentions and deportations without clear explanations. Number 6. Israeli security forces operations. Israeli security forces are known for their aggressive tactics, particularly in occupied Palestinian territories. These operations often occur without warning, and tourists who find themselves in contested areas such as the West Bank may face sudden lockdowns or road closures. Israeli forces regularly carry out raids and military actions, especially in regions with a strong Palestinian presence. In 2021 alone, Israeli forces carried out dozens of airstrikes in Gaza following retaliatory rocket fire, affecting not just the local population but tourists as well. Tourists in these areas often witness heavy-handed responses from security forces, including the use of tear gas, rubber bullets, and live ammunition. The risk of being caught up in these operations is high, particularly in cities like Hebron, where confrontations between settlers and Palestinians are common, making travel in these regions extremely unpredictable. Number 5. Unsafe tourist destinations. Israel's most famous tourist spots, including the religiously significant sites in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv's bustling beach scene, are often marred by sudden outbreaks of violence. For instance, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of the holiest sites in Islam, has been the epicenter of repeated clashes between Israeli police and Palestinian worshippers. Tourists visiting these sacred sites may find themselves in the middle of a violent protest or confrontation with security forces. During the Gaza War of 2014, many international tourists found themselves trapped as flights were canceled and borders were sealed. Tourists who ventured to places like Sderot, a small town near the Gaza Strip, experienced the constant sound of air raid sirens and the sight of buildings damaged by rocket fire. For visitors, even popular cities like Tel Aviv are not immune from the threats of attacks. Number 4. The backlash of Israel's aggressive policies. Israel's long-standing occupation of Palestinian territories and harsh crackdowns on dissent have invited violent retaliation from Palestinian groups and their allies. International outcry over actions like the destruction of Palestinian homes and the building of the controversial separation wall continues to fuel animosity. Palestinian resistance groups often target Israeli infrastructure and tourist sites as symbols of the state. For instance, in 2022, Palestinian militants carried out a deadly shooting in Tel Aviv, specifically targeting areas frequented by tourists. Such acts are often in direct response to Israeli military operations, creating a dangerous cycle of violence that puts visitors in harm's way. Number 3. The growing threat of terrorism. Israel's history is riddled with terrorist attacks, many of which target public spaces filled with civilians, including tourists. One of the most notable attacks occurred in 2017 when a Palestinian rammed a truck into a group of soldiers and tourists in Jerusalem, killing 4. This incident was part of a wave of lone wolf terrorist attacks motivated by Israel's policies in Palestinian territories. The frequent skirmishes between Israeli forces and militants make it difficult to predict when and where the next attack might happen. For tourists, the unpredictability of these attacks is a significant concern, especially when visiting crowded places like markets, historical landmarks, and beaches. Number 2. Political instability in the region. The political landscape in Israel and its neighboring countries is volatile. Israel's ongoing conflict with Palestine has created a permanent state of tension. Additionally, Israel's military actions in Syria and Lebanon and its confrontations with Iran have made the region even more unstable. Tourists visiting Israel must navigate not just the internal political issues but also the external threats from neighboring states. Political instability can escalate at any moment, as seen in the periodic escalations in Gaza. Tourists are often caught in the crossfire, whether through sudden border closures or increased security threats in popular tourist areas. These situations make it challenging to ensure a safe and smooth travel experience. Number 1. Constant militant attacks. Militant attacks have become a grim reality in Israel, particularly around the Gaza border and West Bank. Groups like Hamas and Islamic Jihad regularly launch missile attacks in response to Israeli military actions. In 2023, a series of rocket strikes from Gaza forced many foreign tourists to shelter in safe zones across Tel Aviv and southern Israel. Such attacks are a frequent occurrence, making the country one of the most dangerous destinations in the world. Even with Israel's highly sophisticated Iron Dome missile defense system, no security measure is foolproof. In recent years, militants have targeted places like Jerusalem's Old City, where thousands of tourists gather daily. The threat of an attack is always looming, making travel to Israel a risky proposition for any visitor.